Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you all for joining us today on this important discussion on mental health and its impact on the BIPOC community. My name is Leslie Smith. I am the owner of Usawa Wellness Services. And I wanted to start these chats because each July, it originally started off as National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, but BIPOC Mental Health Month highlights the unique mental health challenges and needs of historically disenfranchised or oppressed racial and ethnic groups in the United States. Black, Indigenous, and people of color still encounter a broad range of discrimination, oppression, and inequity rooted in America's colonialist history, all of which foster collective and individual trauma. So today, what we want to do is delve into the intersectionality of mental health and the experiences faced by individuals from these diverse backgrounds. I think it's really important because by understanding the unique challenges and promoting inclusivity, we all can work towards improving mental outcomes for all. I want to take a minute to introduce our panelists today. We have Kanae Banks, who is a licensed master's social worker. We have Charity Crawford, who is a licensed master social worker. And we also have Kelly Sellers, who is an LPC associate. I do want to provide an opportunity for the ladies just to introduce themselves before we jump into our discussion. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining in. Can we start with Mrs. Banks? Just give us a little bit of your background in the population that you work with within our BIPOC community.
Yes. Hello, my name's Kanae, as she said, and I'm a social worker, and the population that I work with at USAWA is primarily teens. I have a few younger kids, but primarily a lot of them are teens, and a lot of them also are African American and people of color. So.
Thank you. Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly. Like I said, I'm an LPC associate. I predominantly work with adolescents. I work with anywhere from ages like 8 into the teens as well as adults. I generally work with kids with neurodivergence, ADHD types of things. Previously worked in a school. I used to be a school counselor as well. So
awesome. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Hi, Charity.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. Charity Crawford. I'm a licensed master social worker. I primarily work with adult population, special emphasis on the perinatal population, and moms. Also do some couples work as well here.
Awesome. Well, definitely thank you guys for joining in. I know it's been busy for us, but I thank you for taking this hour just to shine a light on how mental health impacts the BIPOC community. I don't think it is talked about enough. I think it is thought of as it's going to be just a generalized experience for all backgrounds, and we all know that is not true. But to start there, I would like to ask you guys, what are some misconceptions that you see in regards to the BIPOC community and mental health?
I'll jump in. I think one of there are a lot of misconceptions, first of all, but one of the primary misconceptions I would say is that there is a thought that if you don't have a mental health condition, then you don't need to take care of your mental health, right? But we all take care of our physical health, right? And we take preventative measures like we have a good diet, nutrition, we're exercising, and just things that are preventative. But you don't need to have diabetes or whatever condition to take care of your physical health, right? So we take that same thought process as it relates to mental health care. We need to constantly be on a daily, regularly incorporating our mental health care into our mental health. So you don't need to have a mental health condition in order to be taking care of your mental health. It is something that is your overall wellness and your well-being is a part of who we are, right? So yeah, everyone can benefit from mental health care.
Thank you. Definitely agree.
I sort of want to expand on that. I think people tend to think that mental health care, even if they feel like there is a concern, is less important or not tied to physical health. When I think we've all found that it's very, very intrinsically tied, physical, mental, it's all sort of put together. And so, and there is, I mean, like we're going to talk about the stigma that there's something, if you have mental health issues, that it's something wrong with you, as opposed to something you're dealing with or working through. It is for some reason, it's morally wrong or something like that.
Thank you.
I also add to that, like Kelly said about it being something wrong. It also is like a lot of people believe that because you have mental health that you are looked at as weak, like you're weak for seeking treatment. But like if you break a leg, you're still going to go to the doctors, to see what's going on. And I think that because mental health is not something that you could physically see, it's not there, but it definitely is so.
I think you each bring up a good point, and I wonder, from your experience, what do you think has led to the stigma surrounding mental health in BIPOC communities? Because it's very layered. There are personal experiences, but there are also societal experiences that have helped to stigmatize mental health. Correct? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I'll say yes. Like definitely. I was also in the military as well. And, anytime somebody had mental health, we had this thing where you had to watch them for 24 hours. So it was definitely a frown upon, because it's like, oh, I need you to go, to sit with somebody for 24 hours. And we didn't at the time, I don't know how it is now, but we didn't get like education as far as why we're sitting with that person. It was just more so like, they're crazy, they're going cuckoo. You got to watch them so they don't kill themselves. And it's like, so that's the military is its culture in itself, as well. So that kind of followed or whatever with me, where it's like, if something mental health related is going on, then there's something that's wrong with me. I don't, I'm not going to say nothing or whatever about this, because I don't want people to be laughing at me or looking at me like something is wrong, so to say.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, generally speaking, American society is built on strength and proving how, you are the best and you're going to win capitalism. I won't get started, I promise. But and so any sense of weakness is, it is a negative, and it is always, there is no middle ground. It is, you are mentally well or you are on suicide watch. And like, if we're going to continue the, sort of analogy to physical health, like I can have a scratch on my arm, or I can be, terminally ill. There is an array of things, and we don't we don't see it, and we don't want to acknowledge that. And it's really not been studied as much. So it's because it is sort of unseen. We have so much less information about it. So, I mean, in one hand, I guess I'm glad we would take it seriously, but then it becomes a negative marker on you. Oh, well, we had to watch you, so now we can't trust you to do anything. And that's not true. I think, as we've learned, in the last, I would maybe 50 years, that, the majority of us have dealt with either temporarily or long-term mental health issues, and they weren't to that extreme. They just did influence our lives, and we should have probably gotten more help than we did at the time.
Yeah.
So good and so true, because like we have this thought that you're either completely insane and out of your mind or you're fine, right? And there is no between, right? And kind of what Kelly was alluding to a little bit is like, here's a T. We all have trauma. Like we all have our stuff, right? Like we have our baggage, we have all our stuff there, our family history, biological factors. There are, it's multifaceted. There are layers to it, right? And there's a thought that if you if you have any kind of mental health diagnosis or this challenge, then you're not mentally healthy, you can be mentally healthy and still, suffer from anxiety disorder. Just like be physically healthy and have issues with your knee, um, whatever it is. So that misconception that you're out your mind, there is that goes along and encourages that stigma as it relates to mental health.
And I think something within the BIPOC community also, if we take away like the society as a context, I think if we talk about our immediate circle as well, whether it's family, whether it's religion, I think those also do play a part in the stigma as well, because how many times have we heard maybe growing up, like, oh, well, you don't need to go talking to anybody, or you don't need to go tell that white person or that man our business, keep it in the family. Those are common messages that may be heard a lot within the BIPOC community because we are such a communal, community. Like we like to keep things within ourselves because there is a distrust, obviously, a historical distrust when we take others in or we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, right? Especially from the medical standpoint, when you think about the Tuskegee experiment and, Henrietta Lacks, just all the different things that we can talk about in regards to the medical disparities, which we'll definitely talk about next week when we talk about perinatal mental health. But, it's just so much that plays into the stigma that it's very layered and it's very complex. And us as mental health professionals have to make sure that we do our due diligence to make sure that we're seeing each individual as an individual and taking all of their intersectionalities into consideration, right? I think that's so important. So thank you guys for that. But when I say that, what do you think, or what is it that we can do to help reduce the stigma surrounding mental health as a mental health professional, but also as just a U.S. citizen or a member of society?
I think for starters is being like not afraid to speak up, not afraid to correct people. I know like even from a religious perspective, like people are afraid to, talk about God. Sometimes it's banned and stuff, but we got to kind of stand up and be more confident as far as educating people on what exactly mental health is and letting them know. Because honestly, if a person doesn't know, that's ignorance. It's not, sometimes it's really like they don't know. They just go off of word of mouth or what they hear everybody else saying. So if you have a platform like all of us or whatever here, family members, school teachers, we have to continuously, educate people on what mental health really is and kind of break down that stigma that it's shame or is bad. It's not a shame, to seek treatment. And so that's definitely really, really important that we make it a habit of doing it, make it a trend of educating others.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And as an individual, like I believe that, we all have some impact in our small sphere of influence, right? So as individuals, as a citizen, we can be honest about our own challenges with our mental health, right? Like we have when it comes to our physical health or our spiritual health, we'll be like, I'm having some issues with my back hurting today. So having that same thought about our mental health, and making it regular in our families, with our children as well, so we don't pass down that generationally to our kids, and we, just stop that generational stigmatizing of mental health. Like it's a part of us. It's a part of who you are. So when you're taking care of yourself, also take care of yourself mentally. So not being afraid to have those conversations in your small spheres of influence with your family right there in the home, with your coworkers to a certain extent, right? With your churches and your neighbors, and so having those conversations, and of course, keeping yourself protected as far as things too deep, but things, just having that same idea about our ailments that we have with our physical health and transferring that to our mental health so that it is something that we're comfortable doing and speaking about, and then those around us just get used to hearing it as well.
Yeah.
I think, yes, I agree completely. I mean, it is being vocal, and it is being just vocal in just a very natural way. Like I went to therapy, whatever. Like it's sort of just normalizing it. I know when I was working in the school, like one of my goals was always to just be very open about mental health with students and parents and the staff. About things that I dealt with when I was having a rough day, as somebody who dealt with neurodivergence and anxiety and extreme overwhelm sometimes. I was like, okay, if I'm going to be in this profession and I want to be an advocate, it has to start with me. Like, this is what I'm dealing with. This is how I'm dealing with it, and sort of create this safe space so that when someone else is feeling it, they feel welcomed to speak to me. And that it doesn't come from judgment or sort of a place of authority. It's almost a place of like kinship, like, okay, this person sort of knows where I'm coming from. And having, worked with kids, I've worked with lots of parents. And I mean, I will give mad props to like this next generation that like are very open about mental health and would have to like convince their parents, no, like, no, I have this, or this is what I'm feeling. And like, it was much harder for their parents and older generations. I guess my generation sometimes too, but I'm old. I'm not a child. But that they do sort of have, like, for all the ills of social media, like having sort of a platform that is of space to find open discussion about it. That is a small positive of social media. I know there are lots of negatives, that is sort of like finding, when we were so disconnected, to be able to find people of similar mind. It is very helpful just having the conversation. And I know for me personally, and I've found with several clients, just having a diagnosis of something, or even just a conversation of like, no, what you're feeling is valid, was like, okay, that feels great. That feels like I'm not alone. And so just having those like normalizing conversations are really, really great for people, I think.
I agree.
I wanted to add to that with what Kelly said, the normalizing, that's very, very profound, because a lot of times when you do seek help, it feels like something is wrong with you. And also too, what Charity has said, as far as the generations, it's like, I know at some schools they do, suicide awareness month, certain mental health things, but I think that it's also important to bring in the generation, to perhaps like have the parents come up to the school to be involved, because when just doing it at the school, that's just hitting one sector, of it. But the kids still have to go back home. And if the belief system is, still frowned upon, it's kind of best to involve, the kids and the adults, so that we hit kind of both sectors, not just one. So that it's not a generational pattern of disbelief that mental health, is bad. So it's definitely important to include the families, even the grandparents, if they're there, because as we all, know, treatment, it doesn't just include the individual. Even treatment for something, physically at the doctor's office, it includes the family. It's like, hey, are you going to be able to take them to their appointment, or are you going to be able to change their Band-Aid or whatever? And the same thing for mental health. It's like, are you going to be able to check up on them? Are you going to be able to, like Kelly said, normalize those feelings? And so thank y'all for that.
Very fantastic point. Kind of like piggybacking off where you guys were going. What are some other ways that we can promote open conversations about mental health in our communities? I think, like Kelly was saying, I think we're starting to see a little bit more post-COVID. But, what are some things that you guys either want to see more of or want to see established within our communities to promote mental health awareness?
I think like in this day and age, we're in a generation where we're always connected to our phone, right? It's right here. And I think what we have done a lot of beautiful job. There's a lot of content creators, there's podcasts, there's blogs, there's so many things out there. And a lot of members of the BIPOC community, we are creating, that content as well to help reduce that mental health stigma. So I think that is something that we've been able to embrace where we are as a generation, and make use of content, make use of social media to help with exploring those conversations about mental health and normalizing that. So, you can just scroll through podcasts, type it in, and there's so many options and so many different ones for BIPOC community. It's so I'm grateful that that is something that I've seen more of, and that we have easy access to right there on our phones.
Mm-hmm. I also think like the media has helped in a little bit, like along with social media. If you think back to, let's say, 20 years ago, if there was a therapist portrayed in some sort of TV or film, that more than likely is going to be a white person, and more than likely it's going to be a white male, right? I think what I've noticed is within the last 15 years, maybe, when therapists are portrayed on TV and film, it has become more of a person of color. I think back to, gosh, I want to say, is it The Fisher? What is that? With Denzel and Antoine Fisher, right? In the military. I was like, oh, wow. So here we have the culture of the military, and we have a Black male in a position, I think he was a psychologist or something, working with another young Black male in the military. I thought that was amazing. And then from there, you're starting to see it more. I do see more women of color in those roles, but, I think it's still just very interesting that we're starting to see that more often.
Yeah, and that helps a lot too, because there's a big thing against, unfortunately back in the day there was slavery and those type of things. So when you put a person, Caucasian, or so to say, just as the only way of seeking treatment as a therapist, then that kind of steers away. It doesn't help break down that generational, curse as far as not going to go seek treatment. When you have somebody of color, whether it's African American, Hispanic, it kind of helps to open up and broaden it, like, hey, what are they doing or whatever? What do they got going on? It's not just, one sector, one race that's doing it. So it draws them, in. And also too, it feels comfortable, to be honest, because honestly, always seeing, a Caucasian person, not in, there's very good Caucasian therapists, but then when you're talking about, indigenous Black, peoples, everybody's not going to want, to see just a Caucasian therapist. They may want to, somebody that they're comfortable with, which could be the same, the same race, the same color, someone that they can relate to. So it's good to have a diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. Speaking as the white person, I mean, like I'm not gonna know, and I will listen, and I will validate, and I will and, you're gonna tell me your story, but I mean, if therapy is so personal, which it is, you want somebody that sometimes you want. I mean, I'm not gonna speak for everyone, but a lot of times you want someone that you can relate to. And I think it is important, speaking even of the like podcasts, it is important for white people to shut up sometimes and elevate the voices of the people of color, because I what am I going to say, that is valid? Like that there's white, we have oppressed people, systems have oppressed people of color forever. And until those systems have changed, like, that's sort of like, we can do all the like all the things I just said on a personal level, but it's also a lot of systemic change that has to happen. And it has to come with like us letting it go, because it hasn't been okay. Like, the systems we created are not okay. They need to change. And I do appreciate the media, and that attempting to show things. Is it perfect? No. But the fact that it is way more prevalent is a big deal, and it is very beneficial. Not where it needs to be though. But yeah, I do think it's like I can only do so much. You know, I can speak to you and listen to you, but I don't understand as much as I want to, you know.
Thank you. I thought you was African American, Kelly. But no, you being you doing stuff like this. No, well, you doing stuff like this, like it really helps as well because you know, Kelly, she's a very good therapist, very good counselor. And so also people seeing us, you know, work together, it also opens up where it's like, hey, well, they're, you know, everybody's not that bad just because we're not of color, because they're working together. So perhaps, you know, she may know something, or it may not be that much discomfort because, you know, we're able to do it in this type of setting. Then yeah, it also helps like, okay, well, maybe it's not that bad as far as seeing a therapist if I don't have somebody available, you know, that's not of color. But it does help, you know, for African Americans, people of color, to see that even though we were oppressed and there was bad things, you know, everybody's not bad. And sometimes, like in this setting, we need to, you know, we need to seek the treatment, whether it's available or not. Color preference, so to say. Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. I do want to just quickly, before we move past, I had a question in the chat, and I'll open it up to you all. So how do you address the importance of mental health in the church or religious community? In my experience, all too often, I have found people feeling like mental health should be addressed only through prayer and does not promote counseling outside of the church.
Well,
where am I saying?
I will remove myself.
Well, thank you for that question.
Yes.
I'll say I'll, you know, disclose that I'm a Christian. My spirituality is important to me. But it's Jesus plus therapy for me, you know. But the thing is that there are Christian counselors out there. And those counselors are able to help with that intersectionality where you're able to they're able to provide evidence-based teachings and principles as it relates to therapy, and also incorporate some spirituality, you know, scripture and things of that nature. So I think being able to be a voice, again, it goes back to influencing those around you, right? You have that impact, so you're able to impact those around you in your circles, in your church, and able to let people know that, you know, we're able to do both, right? There is a world where both exist, right? I can get therapy and also honor my religious beliefs at the same time. So getting therapy does not discount your Christianity or whatever your religion is, right? You can have both exist at the same time and be taking care of yourself spiritually and mentally in the same realm. I hope that answers the question. So
No, yeah, I think that's I think it's important. I think it's an important question for sure, because I think, you know, maybe in the majority of BIPOC communities growing up, things were kept within the church. I mean, even I think if you think Catholicism, you have confessionals, right? So I think it does like span from, you know, your earlier stages of life, and you just kind of become indoctrinated in that, like, okay, church is church. I can't do church and therapy because it just doesn't make sense. From a professional standpoint, I think it's the onus is on us to partner with spiritual organizations, because we as counselors look at the person as a whole, and that takes into context their spiritual self as well. When we talk about soul, right? That is their spiritual self. So we can't discount that or ignore that piece of a person if we're trying to actually promote healing and transformation. We can't ignore the spirituality piece. So whatever that looks like for them, we have to address that, and we have to communicate that to our clients to let them know, like, while I may not, you know the scripture as deep as you do, I am not going to ignore who you are spiritually. And if, I don't want you to do that either, you can have both can coexist. Healing is not a black and white thing, as we know. It is very complex. And so you can get your cup filled many ways. But I do think, again, from a business standpoint, it's nothing wrong with partnering with churches. I mean, we do it, we have churches refer clients to USAWA. We work with them as well. So it can happen, and I think as a person in the community, if you see a need within your church, speak to your leadership and say, hey, this is something I'm seeing within the congregation. How can we address this? Do we want to bring someone in here to partner with you guys to, address any things that need to be addressed? Or is there somebody that I can speak to about this particular topic that you trust, right? Because, I think as a community, it's important that we work together. It doesn't have to be separate.
Yes. I was going to add too, I'm not necessarily Christian. I try and steer away. I believe in God a lot. And I know, like, in the African American community, there's this thing where, you're not supposed to be anxious. The word says, do not be anxious. It doesn't say that you're not going to be anxious. So when you become anxious, like, what do? There's still tools. And really in all sectors, like, faith is something that we cannot see. Faith without works is dead. And so you still have to do the work, even from a mental health perspective. It's not, God he didn't create counselors and therapists for no reason. Sometimes you have to utilize the tools, and those tools may come through in therapy form. That doesn't mean that you don't have faith. And in fact, it means that you believe doing something, to get better will strengthen you. It doesn't discredit, God. He's not going to be mad because you see a counselor, so to say. So this is my little 2 cents.
2 cents. Got it.
I'll just sort of wrap up as the least religious of the group. I don't see therapy as inherently anti-religion at all. I mean, it is very much like Leslie's, you all said. I mean, it's the goal for me, is to meet people where they are. If that is a part of you, then that's part of you, and we're going to work with that. It's not, and nothing I've ever learned has been against any religious belief or text or ideology. It's always been things that are used in conjunction with people in general. And so I think sometimes there can be sort of this fear that it is going to sort of push against spiritual beliefs, and that we're possibly going to be like, no, don't pray about it, do these things. And that's not the goal. It's just like more of it's not an or, it's an and, like, and this, and these are things you can also do.
Great. Thank you, ladies. And thank you for the question. Okay, let me jump to, because I do think there is a strong community within the church, but I also want to ask, how can individuals support friends or family members who are struggling with their mental health? What are some ways or some tips you can give those who may be, who may have someone special to them struggling with mental health?
I'd say begin with like listening first. I think sometimes we skip the listening and we jump right into giving advice, right? So actively listen, ask questions that are empathetic, right? How are you feeling? Typically, if it's someone we're close to, we already know that they're struggling with something. We already know what they've been through, and that they may have some challenges. So asking empathetic questions and actively listening, right? Actively listening, meaning we're listening for understanding, listening for what support may be needed. So I would say listen first, and before we give advice.
I would say on top of that, just believe them, because a lot of times people are actively working to hide mental health, even your closest friends. So you see a lot of times somebody will open up and you'll go, what? I had no idea that you couldn't possibly be anxious, depressed, or whatever. And so instead of sort of, it comes from a place of like support and goodness and like, no, you're so great, but it can be taken as like, okay, well, never mind. I don't want to open up and so the baseline of, okay, if somebody is opening up, to believe them and then listen. And it's not, it's usually not them asking for you to fix it. It's them trying to open up. And I think, the support is being there and then saying, hey, do you need help finding a therapist? Do you, I hate saying, what do you need from me? Because then it sort of puts the onus back on them to like tell you what to do. But I think just sort of saying, okay, I'm here for you. If you need anything, that's there, but just, if they're sharing it, it's the truth. And that but your life is so great. I mean, that's why it's a problem. That's usually why people are upset, is because the disconnect between what's here and what's out there is very hard. So just the baseline of listening and believing them can be very beneficial.
Also too, like going the extra mile to support them, like see, am I able to come with you to somewhere, or even drive with you to the appointment and I'll send in the car type of thing. Also too, like going and educating yourself on what they got going on, because it's already an uncomfortness, like coming out with, hey, I'm struggling with this. So you can do, there's Google, there's all type of things like everybody's mentioned that you can go in there and kind of read up and see at least a basic of what they have, going on, and also not holding it over their head. So I see that a lot. It's like, oh, well, did you go to your therapy session? And, oh, maybe you need to take your medicine. And it's like, it's already a bad feeling. So it's like, kind of try and refrain from those negative feelings in regards to therapy, like support them. Like, hey, you know what? I don't want you to feel awkward. Try and make it unawkward, by just being there for them. And then also too, not overly being there, because, like even people that have cancer, unfortunately, they're like, I'm ill, but I can still go walking. Right. So don't like, oh, okay, I got it. Cause then it'll make them feel more like something's wrong with me. So just kind of all of that in a nutshell. Don't close the door. Like leave the door open. Don't
treat them differently. They're still them,
I'll add to what Kanae said about just the supporting, like in a physical way, when you're talking about driving and things like that. Sometimes they need help them with these kids. So they need to go to an appointment. Many times in the BIPOC communities, we're working 2 jobs or multiple jobs, or we have 1 vehicle and we have to go here and there and get the kids here and there. So we're unable to take off time. We don't have paid time off. On top of with that being said, helping them get help with the kids if they do have children, or help them to get things done outside of their mental health, so that they can focus in on their mental health.
Thank you. I wanted to ask. I want to just show this infographic from the ACA, or Our Body American Counseling Association, because I want to talk about what exactly, or why is BIPOC Mental Health Month important? What are the factors that come into play, or that are placed upon the BIPOC community, that make this month needed? So here are just some things for those in the audience. I don't want to go through all of them, but I think these are just really astounding statistics on why culturally competent therapists are so important when we are opening our doors and welcoming and wanting members of the BIPOC community to seek mental health services. So this actually takes a look at the effects of racism, right? Because societal race, structural racism, however you want to frame it, is one of the factors that leads to the disparity and the the stigma of mental health. So if you start like up in the corner, you see the cost of racism in the US per year. Astounding. $2 trillion when you actually look at everything. And this comes in the form of bias against workers, wage discrimination, hiring discrimination. As Charity was saying, like, most of the people in the BIPOC community have to work 2 jobs, right? Just to make it, just to get by. And you want to think about that. How does that impact their mental health, right? How does that impact the accessibility of mental health services? If I have to work 2 jobs, when am I going to have time to sit for an hour in therapy, right? You also want to look at discrimination based on price, services discrimination, capital investment discrimination. All of that plays into why this conversation is so important. You can take a look at some of the other ones. Definitely the ones in the schools. That is a big one. Of students reported, 15.8% of students reported experiencing race-based bullying or harassment. And that is a direct link to a negative mental and physical health experience. That is for sure, because where do our children spend the majority of their day? In schools. All right. Look at the number of active hate groups, and they're no longer covert. They are out there. Like, it is in your face. It is on social media. It is on regular media. Our children are seeing it. It is no longer just walking down the street and in the event that you see them marching down your street. It's in your face now. So think of how that impacts mental health as well. The groups, of course, they are listed. I'm not going to give them names. I'm not going to repeat them, but they are listed there for you. And then, of course, we talked about healthcare and the disparities within that. So statistics on that as far as receiving lesser quality healthcare than white patients. Pretty astounding, So I show this to get the conversation going as taking all of this into consideration. What steps do we need to do as mental health professionals to make sure we are providing competent care for our clients within the BIPOC community?
I say to ensure that our continuous education is geared towards those people of color, because it updates, and there may be a lot of stuff like sometimes we kind of take our own culture and we kind of make it like it's everybody else, like every Black person they're going to believe or disbelieve, and we just have to be mindful that there's different sectors to to culture. So it's very important to make sure that we're hitting all dynamics, not just kind of premeditating it like every person of color is going to believe the same things that I believe, because that may not necessarily be true. So
that's just so true. Yeah. And I think you're spot on, Kanae. Thank you. I do think that whether it was genuine or not, I do think that most non-BIPOC people view BIPOC as a monolith, right? Like, their experience is going to all be the same. Like, okay, I've read this one book, I'm good to go. I know everything I need to know about the BIPOC community and how to treat them. We are definitely not a monolith. Not all Black people have the same shared experiences, right? Not all Indigenous people or people of color have the same shared experiences. We have more complex experiences. My experience is going to be totally different from someone who was raised in Texas. I'm from North Carolina. We may share the same race, but our ages are different. If our sexual orientation is different, if our upbringing was different, if our religion is different, if where I grew up is different, just the fact that I am my own individual makes me different, right? I think that's really important to stay. Thank you, Kanae.
Well, I mean, I think yes, 100%. I think it should start in the schools. And I think that our government sees that if we do that, it's not going to go well. And so you see them actively working against diversity, equity, and inclusion training, or any sort of anything that would in any way educate somebody is seen as whatever phrasing they want to use to justify it. And so it's, if we educate the people, then we will be able to, it is seen as the BIPOC community is other, they're other. And so they're over here, as opposed to they're people, they're humans, and we just work with humans. And so if you can other people, I mean, it's in every study of every evil situation, if you can make people the other, then it's, it's easier to treat them poor. I mean, you see it in the schools, and you see it in any kind of disciplinary anything, that if it is a white kid, well, they probably have a mental health issue, we should take care of them. And then when the child of color gets in trouble, they are just a bad kid. And I was probably annoyingly loud about it, and I'm sorry to annoying people. I would be like, that's not it. This is a person who might also have mental health, or God forbid, the white person's a bad kid. I don't know. Well, let's do it. And so you have to be loud and annoying. And I have to be loud and annoying about it, because the white people that don't want to do the work can continue to other. That's that group. Okay, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to have these conversations. Because I mean, those statistics are awful. They're horrifying. And it's just really people, come on. It's infuriating to me that we see this as a society and we go, well, okay, that's not okay. We shouldn't have chunks of people that are dying at exponential rates. We just shouldn't. And it's okay. I'll mute myself because I'll take up the rest of the time.
Thank you, Kim. All right, I do have a question. Oh, Charity, go ahead. Sorry. I do have a question from the chat. In what ways has society been damaging towards the push for improved mental health services, i.e. societal norms, government programs, etc.? Good question. I like that question.
I'll say I think that the news has done a better job, but sometimes the news embellishes things, right? So there might be a focus on someone committing a crime or being violent who has a mental health disorder, when the research shows only 3 to 5% of violent crimes were committed by folks who had a mental health disorder. But if we are seeing on our television and the news, we turn that on and it's okay, there's someone with a mental health disorder, they are violent. So I would say that can be exacerbated by what we see on the news. Well, it may have been, sure, that person did have a mental health disorder. What we're seeing is, we're seeing that often, but the data does not show that because you have a disorder that makes you violent, and just the violent crimes are not being committed by those who have a mental health disorder. So I would say starting there.
Mm-hmm.
Also too, seperating the Charity just said, the violence, separating the violence and the mental health aspect, kind of if it is something with mental health, kind of educating, on there, what potentially could have led or whatever to it. And also preventing people from saying oh, that's just an excuse to, excuse the behavior. It's not excuse or whatever for the crime, but in reality, it also shows what else was going on. We have reasons as to why there was racism and, KKK and, this, that, and the third. Oh, it was because back in the times or was no, whatever. And so it should also be like that also for, for mental health, as to potentially what could have happened and maybe something that we missed. And also too, a lot of the diagnoses they're not really diagnosed because they don't seek the treatment to begin with. So sometimes you see like, oh, they had this, or they were, you know, they were doing all this stuff, and it's like we look at it like, it probably was something else, but it's not in there because they never went to go seek treatment to begin with. So just being, you know, for us being like aware of that piece as well.
To follow what you're saying, I think it's also important to remember to know that most of what our profession uses was not normed on Black or Indigenous people of color, meaning that, you know, the DSM did not necessarily have Black or Indigenous people of color in mind when they created the diagnoses. Testing did not have, they, you know, we were not the subjects or the population being sampled for the different assessment or measures. So that in itself kind of excludes us and damages the push towards improved mental health, because these are things that we have to use in order to provide the services that we provide. I also think that the school system banning certain books, the curriculum that we have to go by because of legislation, you know, that doesn't help in improving mental health services. I think requiring teachers to be mental health professionals doesn't help improving mental health services. I think TV or the archetypes of, like, my thing is the strong Black woman archetype that's whack as all get out to me, but that was introduced because of the movies and kind of the roles that was there for Black women. If they weren't a strong Black woman like Foxy Brown, then they were Ancient Mama or a Mammy, or they were a Jezebel. Like, that's what we had to see growing up looking. And so I think all, you know, that's some of many that play into like just causing so much issue with improving mental health outcomes within the BIPOC community.
Yeah, I mean, and like sort of on the flip, we never use mental health as a reason for someone's success. Like, I would venture to say that many successful people probably have an anxiety disorder. I'm not gonna, like, you know, diagnose, but like they don't always end up in bad. They don't always lead to poor choices. And so if we're only trying to explain away poor choices through mental health, and if we're going to use it as an explainer, then use it as an explainer all the way around, you know, because then why would I want to go get diagnosed if it's going to be used against me when I make a mistake?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, and so it's sort of part of that normalizing it, where like when people are successful and there are, you know, there are pockets of people that do that are celebrities in some sense, and then they'll talk about their mental health and you can go, oh wow, look how successful they were. But then the news, you know, something happens and it's like diagnosed with blah, 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 you know, and you're like, okay, well, we got one, we lost five or whatever. I mean, and then if we're going to talk about systems and government systems, I mean, like healthcare is like a huge hindrance. Like, if it's tied to employment, and then you have to convince, you know, insurance to even like
To cover it, yeah.
Prove and to cover it, and like, no, we need it. And if it's not, you know, I mean, it's an actively working against people getting help type of situation.
Mm-hmm. One of our members said a lot of society doesn't want to fund mental health. They complain about their taxes. So yeah, that is so true. You spend so much on the rhetoric of defunding the police. How about you fund mental health within the police department? Like, how about you have a unit specifically for, you know, crisis calls or something like that. So that is so true about, you know,
Restructuring.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just read about it in Colorado. It could be Denver, it could be not, but a police department that sort of restructured and diverted like mental health calls to the correct type of person, and that violence went down significantly.
We just had a local situation today. I mean, you know, this week, unfortunately, you know, where there was a loss of life, and it's just, there are so many barriers, it appears, and I think it starts with who we vote in charge. I mean, you know, at the point, but not even who we vote in charge, but who runs, you know, I mean, who understands the community. who understands the barriers that are placed in front of the community, who understands mental health. You know, they don't have to be a counselor to run, but like you understand that there is a mental health problem. So, is that going to be on your, agenda when you're running? I don't think that's asked enough for the people that are in these positions. I'm sorry, Chair. I know I cut you off.
Oh no, I'd say too, like anybody can go to a city council meeting. You don't have to be, government or anything. And I think that it's important for us to push for more people of color to be involved, because when you go to those meetings, those are the meetings that tell you where the funding is going to. And, when you get those things in the mail that we just throw in the trash because we're, ignorant of it, we don't really know. I think it's important, especially, of more people of color to get involved with what's going on when it comes
Absolutely.
from a government, because the government is bad. They still have to go by policy, if that makes sense. So if more of us are voting against it or complaining, about the need of mental health needing to be more incorporated, we for sure have HOA meetings, homeowners association. We can have, some mental health meetings within the community. But yeah, it first starts, like Ms. Leslie said, with the education behind it. Because honestly, we don't really know where the funding and all that is going, unless you're put in the position to do it. But we all can attend. Of course, the government doesn't say that, hey, make sure you go to
Right.
the city council meeting, so you can, see what we're doing wrong. But yeah, I
Mhm.
think that it's important, especially people of color, because we have this, we ourselves in a culture, we have this thing where the government is bad because, in reality, for us it is bad, so to say, but times have changed and we can stand up more and get more involved. And it'll help, when it comes to mental health, because more people of color, more people will be speaking about the need for it. They complain about substance abuse and all that. Well, some of that comes from unhealthy coping patterns that could be minimized, if we incorporate more mental health. So
Thank you, ladies. All right, I do want to, and I want to respect everyone's time. We are coming up on our hour, but I do want to just go look in the chat and see if there's any other questions or if there's any other comments that you guys have. And we'll close out by making sure that we let you guys know, as our audience, if there's ever a service that you all need, how to contact us. A lot of society doesn't want to fund mental health. They complain about their taxes. Also, as an educator, we often hear overwhelming expectations of how we're the teacher, the parent, the advocate, the therapist. And we say it jokingly, but as Leslie stated, expecting us to be trained in mental health to better serve our students is, as I said earlier, overwhelming and not a solution to the mental health crisis. I don't know how y'all teachers do it. I so agree, April. I hold my heart in my hand for you, but I got, that is a tough job, but it's crazy the expectation that teachers and school counselors have. It's beyond me. Now having two in middle school, it's just blowing my mind. The last one, how can one go about scheduling with one of the therapists? Awesome. So we are all located in San Antonio, Texas. We provide virtual and in-office sessions. Our office is located in Live Oak, and I will put our email address and phone number in the chat. Again, we can do virtual if you are not in the San Antonio area. And if you ladies have anything else to say, I will do one last round robin while I put our information in the chat for her.
I will say this was so good. And I think, and I believe that the entry point into us stomping out the stigma is having conversations like this. So this was so important, and more discussions like this will help to start reducing that stigma. Thank you, ladies.
yes, thank you, everybody. Thank Miss Leslie, Charity, Kelly. Yeah, I appreciate it. So these type of things, like Charity just said, it does definitely help, and it makes a difference, and it's a starting point. And so hopefully, tell everybody, not too many, it's a little bit shy, but no, tell everybody. And let's keep it going, to be honest. So thank you, everybody, for providing y'all input, and yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, same. It's been really great. I think you have to have these conversations, and I appreciate being involved in it so much.
Thank you, guys. And next week we will be back here at 12:30 discussing perinatal mental health, mood and anxiety mood and anxiety disorders among the BIPOC community as well. So I look forward to talking with some of you again. And again, if you have any questions, please email us or give us a call, and we will see you all next week. Thank you, ladies, so much. Everybody have a great weekend.